All right, we are live. How's it going, everybody? Man, there are some interesting news items coming out about the war on drugs that's really going hot in Mexico. As a matter of fact, there is a report out that shows that U.S. Special Operations troops are on the ground in Baja California, specifically in Mexico, collecting intelligence and also getting potentially their hands dirty a little bit, taking out cartel sites. And so we're going to talk about that today. And thank you very much for being with us. And again, please do me a favor and hit that like button. Also, put in the chat where you're watching from. I'm going to ask that. Like to watch those. And thank you very much for being here, everybody. So before I get to that, it is the time of year for, signing up for Medicare. You got to get your Medicare plan put together. And as you know, it's tremendously complicated. It's way tougher than it's supposed to be. It's almost like the government has a committee of people that sits around and says, how can we and how do you choose the right one? Well, glad you asked. There is a free service called Chapter. Chapter makes this process very simple. You can call that number on the screen there, and you'll talk to a real person that's not getting a commission to sell you on one plan over another. They're salaried people, and they will walk you through the entire process and help you get set up with the right Medicare plan for you. And now I've heard from a bunch of our viewers that have already done this, and they're very happy with the help that they've received from Chapter. And so I highly recommend it. If you need to get your Medicare taken care of, even if you already have a Medicare plan, you can call Chapter and they will check to see if it's the best plan for you out of all 24,000 plans that are out there. So definitely go to that number on the screen, 855-900-2427, and talk to a live human being at Chapter, and they will get you set up with the right Medicare plan. So I'm going to put that banner up on the screen. So if you didn't quite get that number, you can get the number right there. 636-812-6714 is the number you can call as well. So now let's talk about what's going on. What I'm talking about today comes primarily from an article in a online intelligence website. This is a subscribers only website that costs about a couple $1,000s a year to subscribe to. And they are not some fly-by-night organization. They are very serious intel guys, and they can cut through the chatter, let's say, with the kind of stuff that's coming out. So while what I'm about to talk about is not corroborated through the U.S. government, of course, the U.S. government is not going to admit to any of this anyway, but this is one of the only places that's reporting this deeply on this topic. But so just keep that in mind. And it is not gospel. It's just likely, good information to know. And what they're saying in this article is that there are small groups of U.S. Special Operations Forces. This would be like Delta Force and SEAL Team 6. And just to give you some context, what I need to do is explain that a little bit further, because I know a lot of people are not familiar with Delta Force, SEAL Team 6, Special Operations Forces. What's the difference with all these different special ops forces the United States has? And so to put it simply, there's a hierarchy, and the top special operations forces in the United States are called Tier 1 operators. These Tier 1, they're called Tier 1 because there's only one general between them and the president. That would be the JSOC commander, Joint Special Operations Command commander. And so these, there are the various different special operations forces. And I'm saying that very specifically, okay, because when you're talking about military stuff, the words you use matter. So, for example, I used to fly helicopters in the National Guard, but I was not a helicopter pilot. I was an Aeroscout observer. And so Aeroscout observers did not get as much training as a full-fledged pilot. And so I never soloed in a helicopter or things like that. And so it would be stolen valor for me to say that I was a helicopter pilot. I've heard other people say that about me because they don't understand the nuance there. But that's how important it is to get the words right when you talk about the military. It's a very arcane culture. And part of my job is to, as a former military guy and a journalist, is to explain that culture to you so that you understand it a little bit better. So let's talk about the different levels of special operations, Tier 1 units. So a Tier 1 unit there are Army Rangers, there are Navy SEALs, there are Green Berets, which are known as the Special Forces, and there are some Air Force units like Joint Tactical Aircraft Controllers and pararescuemen and things like that. And then you have like aviation units like Task Force 160th, which is a helicopter unit that flies little birds and other helicopters. These are, I kid you not, the best helicopter pilots on planet Earth. I mean, there's no question about that. They're the best helicopter. Matter of fact, I think I have a video of them here. If I can find what I did with it. There it is. I'm going to turn the audio off on that, but these are attack helicopters, AH-6s. They're called little birds, okay, and they have MH-6 and AH-6s, and these are flown by Task Force 160th. They are extremely deadly and accurate. You see the guys hanging on the outside of the helicopter here. That's about the most fun you can have with your clothes on right there, folks. I've done that many times in my service with the Rangers, and riding on the outside of a little bird flying around at treetop level is about the most fun you can have. These guys are extremely good pilots. They have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of hours, some of them, and they have those rocket pods on the side of the helicopters, and they can aim those things by aiming the helicopter. They don't aim the rocket pods. Thank you, MM. They actually aim the helicopter, and they'll just take a grease pencil and put a little cross on the windscreen. These guys are fast roping out of, that was pretty slow fast roping, but they're fast roping out of a little bird. You can do that as well. They fly other things besides little birds, but this is just an idea of what the Task Force 160th helicopters can do, and they are spectacular. Okay, so those are all Tier 1 units. Now, they all have different jobs. As you can see here, Task Force 160th, their job is to get other special operations units to the battlefield, to the target, and drop them off, and then support them by fire by using their 2.75-inch rockets like you see on the pod right there on the side, or they have miniguns where they can fire a machine gun at about 4,000 rounds a minute. That is extremely deadly. And so they're firing the rockets, 2.75-inch rockets. So that's what Task Force 160th does. The Rangers are like just think of it as the president's kickoff team. The Rangers are specialists in killing people and breaking things. And so they are designed and trained to be the most lethal fighting force on planet Earth. And so they very much are always there when there's a special operations mission, but they're usually on the outskirts. What they do is they'll take, let's say, Delta Force, which I'll talk about in a second, and they will accompany them into an objective. They will take up blocking positions around the objective, and they will protect the other special operations units that are going into the objective to take out a hostage, or rescue a hostage, take out a kingpin, some kind of bad guy, capture, kill missions, that sort of thing. So the Rangers are there to absolutely decimate any opposition. And that's why all we ever did when I was in the Rangers was train to kill people and break things. And I got real good at that, which when I got out, I realized there wasn't much of a civilian market for that. Just interesting how God works, because now I use the knowledge that I learned in the Rangers to explain things to you. So then you have the Green Berets. Now, the Green Berets have a different primary mission. The Green Berets, or the Special Forces, okay, now, again, you got to make a differentiation between Special Operations Forces, because Special Operations Forces encompass everybody in Special Ops. Rangers, Task Force 160, SEALs, everybody. But the Special Forces is the Green Berets. The Green Berets' main mission is to train local partner forces. So they're going to go into Yemen, and they're going to train Yemeni forces to take on the Houthis, something like that. That's their primary mission. Now, during the War on Terror, all of these missions kind of got mixed up. So everybody did, objective, hit objectives for sensitive site exploitation. Everybody did raids. Everybody did ambushes. Everybody did everything. But the Special Forces' primary mission is they're the trainers. They're the teachers. They go into a foreign nation. They recruit foreign nationals, train their militaries to do work kind of as proxy forces for the United States. We're going to talk in a minute about how the Special Forces went into Colombia to train their forces and actually took down a bunch of kingpins there. Okay. So somebody was Ranger Tab, but not in a Ranger unit, EDC patrol. That's great. Now, again, that's another thing I need to explain. It's a lot of people that are Rangers, they call themselves Rangers, and they're allowed to do that, are people who just went through Ranger School, which is actually just a leadership course that's based on the Special Operations unit. So it's not a Special Operations course per se. It's just a leadership course, but they call it Ranger School. And so guys that are like in the infantry or something can go through Ranger School and get that leadership training, how to lead men in combat, and then take that back to their units. And they can wear the Ranger tab, but they're not going to wear the Ranger scroll, which is the unit patch for the Rangers, which is the Special Operations unit. So if somebody who's been through the Ranger School is not, by definition, a special operator, but they've been through the leadership course. I know that gets really confusing, but I've had to explain that to a lot of different people over the years. Now, Navy SEALs, they're specializing in doing things in the water. And this one more little thing I need to explain here. Not all Special Forces are Tier 1 units. Only Delta Force, which is Special Forces Operational Detachment Delta. Delta Force is a is a Tier 1 unit. The rest of Special Forces units, some A teams are Tier 1, but at least in my understanding, not all of them are. So some of them are not Tier 1 status. Same thing with the SEALs. SEAL Team 6 is a Tier 1 unit. But the rest of the SEAL teams, SEAL Team 3, SEAL Team 7, whatever, are not considered Tier 1 units, but they feed into those Tier 1 units of Delta Force and SEAL Team 6. SEAL Team 6 is, the SEALs specialize in doing things in the water, in and around water, or from the water. So if there's water involved in any special operations mission, you can bet there are going to be some SEALs there. And those guys are extremely fit, very competent, and very arrogant, I have to say. The Green Berets call themselves the quiet professionals. They don't talk a lot about what they do. The joke with Navy SEALs is that if some guy tells you he was a Navy SEAL, how do you know if he's telling you the truth? If he tries to sell you his book or his workout video, because at least in my experience, they're cocky, and they have a right to be, because they're bad to the bone for sure. But so their specialty is to do things in and around the water. They don't always, of course, in Afghanistan, there wasn't a lot of water. And so I went on several missions with SEAL Team 3, SEAL Team 7, while I was embedded over there. And they were doing the same kind of missions the Rangers were doing and the Special Forces were doing. Then there's Marine Special Operations Forces, not Tier 1, but they're part of Special Ops community, etc. So all of that to say that when we say there are Special Operations Forces going into Mexico, we are not specifying which units those are, but you could kind of read between the lines and say, if that's happening, and it's got to be really under the radar, deniable, then it's probably a Tier 1 unit like Delta Force or SEAL Team 6 or both. And they're probably not going in on their own. They're probably going in as they've been sheep dipped and put in under the auspices of what they call the Activity, which is a CIA Special Operations Division. And what they're doing there is there's what we know that they're doing and what we think that they're doing. All right. So we're going to parse that out now. Okay. We know for a fact the United States has been really ramping up its collection of, intelligence over Mexico. They are pointing their very substantial signals intelligence capability, open source intelligence capabilities, cyber intelligence capabilities, and yes, human intelligence capabilities at the cartels across Latin America and elsewhere. As a matter of fact, we have heard that this, I got to turn the sound off on that. This is called the Echo Voyager, and it's basically an unmanned submarine the United States is now building to collect information across the globe. The Echo Voyager is an intelligence gathering platform, and they've got a bunch of these that are now plying the waters all around the globe. But we know that there's at least one of these off the coast of Mexico. And so what might they be doing? Well, they're picking up perhaps boats that are coming out of Mexico going into the United States. They are maybe listening for signals intelligence. There's a lot that they have the capability of doing. And those things can stay out, floating around in the ocean, collecting intelligence for up to 6 months with no human intervention, no humans on board, which is pretty amazing. That's pretty incredible that we're coming up with those. They're made by Boeing, and this is the future of naval warfare, naval intelligence gathering. That's not the only nautical unmanned vehicle that the United States is fielding. I've seen some others in Panama that look like small sailboats that go out and collect intelligence all around the world. And it's not just for military purposes. They do it for scientific purposes. If there's a oil spill or some kind of other environmental disaster, they can go out there and monitor the water quality and monitor different things like that. So they use them for all kinds of stuff. All right. So people are saying, please show us your shirt. Well, we have been working on getting some merch for our loyal Hot Zone listeners and viewers. And so this is one of our prototypes. It's the Hot Zone T-shirt that I'm wearing today, and they are going to be for sale very soon. We're just getting the website put together. You T-shirt, but we've got a bunch of different designs. Not just the tactical monkey shirt, but so. Do you like it? I just wondered, what do you think? You guys like the angry monkey shirt? I I own a couple of well, I don't know if I could say I own two monkeys. I work for two monkeys. I'm staff for them basically. But we have two monkeys at our home in West Virginia. I'm sorry, in Panama. I'm in West Virginia today. So there's that. Okay, now do we know the United States has been collecting intelligence very prolifically across Mexico? We've had aerial drones flying over Mexico. We've had these sea drones. We've been collecting. This is one area where the United States kind of fell down on the job in recent years, was in the area of human intelligence. Okay. And that's because, we just thought, well, we don't need to put people at risk. We can just fly over them with a drone and we can suck up all their electronic communications and get the intel we need. And it was really kind of institutional timidity on the part of the CIA that led to us not dismantling our human intelligence capabilities, but really scaling them back, because that's the most dangerous way to collect intelligence. And so we are now, under the Trump administration, rebuilding that capability not from scratch, but it's going to take some time to ramp it up. And part of how we're doing that is by making use of these special operations units like Delta Force and SEAL Team 6. And there are other special operations. I think it's 7th Group, I think it's 7th Group specializes in Latin America. And so they all speak Spanish, and we can make use of those guys. And what they're doing is they're sending, this is, again, according to leaked information, they're sending teams of guys 2 at a time into Mexico to infiltrate these drug networks and figure out where the drugs are being made, how they're being shipped, what the shipping routes are, what the hide sites are, where the tunnels are that go into the United States, or how they're getting them into the US and all that sort of thing. In so doing, we have some US forces that are likely on the ground inside Mexico that are at tremendous risk to themselves. They are putting themselves at tremendous risk to gather that kind of information. Now, the article goes a step further. And again, this is the article on Intelligence Online. And it alleges that these U.S. military forces are not only training their counterparts, they're training special units of the Mexican military. One of them is they call it GAIN, GAIN, but that's a Spanish acronym. And I think in my notes here, I've got the acronym for that. Let me take this off the screen. Go look at my notes for a second. This acronym stands for, where is it? GAIN. No, I forget what it's called. Anyway, it's a counterterrorism force that is being recruited, vetted, and trained by the CIA. And then ostensibly, U.S. Special Forces are going in to train them and potentially even go on missions with them. This is the key here. I mean, this is like We just don't know exactly what they're doing on the ground because that's obviously highly classified. But if they are on the ground conducting kinetic missions, this would be a real step up in the ladder of escalation of our war against the cartels. Now, President Trump has made threats to potentially strike these cartels from the air in Mexico. He's said, yeah, we may, and Pete Hegseth has talked about it too. We may send drones in there and start drone striking these cartel members, to which Gloria Sheinbaum, the president of Mexico, just about set her hair on fire. She obviously is not going to like that at all. I mean, what president would, oh, sure, a foreign entity come in here and start bombing things in our country. And President Trump's answer to that is, well, if she doesn't like it, then maybe she should do something about it. My friend Oscar Blue Ramirez is pretty confident that not just the lower level politicians, but even up to and including President Sheinbaum, are in the pocket of the cartels, that Mexico is essentially a failed state that is controlled by the cartels, and the government is there kind of in name only, or to at least to function as a buffer for the cartels with governments like the United States. And what you always hear is that, well, the drug problem is really a U.S. problem. This is what you always hear out of Mexican politicians. We'll hear from President Petro in Colombia here in a minute, talking this way. They always say, well, there wouldn't be any drugs going into America if there wasn't such a demand for the drugs. It's all America's fault. If only America wasn't, buying all these drugs, then we wouldn't have, nobody would be sending them up there from Mexico. And of course, that's one way to look at it. But you could also say that there wouldn't be as many people using drugs if they weren't readily available. And so, it's one of those, if you build it, they will come kind of things, that you make the drugs, you send the drugs to America. Well, yeah, the drugs are there. They're being pushed. That's why they call these distributors drug pushers. They're pushing the drugs on people, getting people hooked, and creating that market. But if we are able to clamp down on the source of these drugs, then we will certainly reduce the amount of demand. So you could make that argument right back at Mexico, that she says, well, if you would just address the demand, then you wouldn't need to address the supply. And our answer should be, addressing the supply is addressing the demand for drugs. No two ways about it. So you add to that the fact that now the cartels are putting out bounties on ICE agents. This is Kristi Noem on Fox News the other day talking about that. Take a listen.
Demonization of law enforcement has real life consequences. And God forbid we see any more bloodshed, Dana.
We have specific officers and agents that have bounties that have been put out on their heads. It's been $2,000 to kidnap them, $10,000 to kill them. They've released their pictures. They're actually going out there and saying, kill these people and we'll give you this much money to do it.
So, I mean, whoops. Hello. Okay, there we are. So, I mean, if the cartels are putting bounties on the heads of American law enforcement, and, aside from the fact that they're pumping millions of pills of fentanyl into the United States, cocaine, marijuana, everything coming in, human trafficking, sex trafficking, child sex trafficking, I mean, doing all these kinds of things in the course of their illicit activities, I don't think it's a real stretch for the Trump administration to declare that these people are a threat to national security. They are, I mean, think about it. If China was, or Iran, let's say, was, if they sent a bunch of agents over to the United States and killed 100,000 Americans in 1 year, we would be at war with Iran. No ifs, ands, or buts. But yet we've had 100,000 people a year dying from fentanyl overdoses, and much of that fentanyl is brought in through Mexico. And the precursor chemicals are sent by China, so China is definitely involved in that. How is that not an act of war? Because they're killing us in our own country. That makes it worse. That doesn't make it less of a threat. It makes it more of a threat. And so I have no problem whatsoever with these guys going in, and, you know, whether they're going in from land, from air, or by the sea. I would say that most of these guys that are going into Baja California are likely going in by sea, but going in and actually taking these cartels to task, whether or not it's being done kinetically by U.S. troops or not. I mean, it's more likely that the U.S. troops that are in Mexico are training Mexican special operations forces and then supporting them with intelligence and stuff as they go in and take out the bad guys. That takes U.S. troops sort of one step removed from the danger and makes it less likely that we'll have U.S. troops killed in that operation. So it's most likely that's the way it's happening. But that doesn't mean that the United States is not very soon going to be dropping bombs on cartel terrorists, whether they're in Mexico or in Venezuela or maybe even in Colombia. So now let's go over to what's happening with our troop buildup. Oh, and one other thing. There's a ship. It's called the MV Ocean Trader. And I've got a video of them, I believe. Where did that go? There it is. The MV Ocean Trader looks like a cargo ship. Matter of fact, you'll see pictures of it with cargo containers on the back of it. But this is a special operations support and logistics vessel. And really what this is it's a floating special operations military base. Now, this thing is currently in the Caribbean off the coast of Venezuela. But earlier this year, it was off the coast of Baja California. Now, this thing has a bunch of those little bird helicopters on it. It has some fast attack boats and lots of other, secret squirrel type equipment, drones that have the capability of inflicting damage or collecting intelligence, and so on and so forth. Okay, so this is the MV Ocean Trader. Now, this thing, as I said, is now in the Caribbean because we're building up forces there, and it's not unlikely that the United States will do some sort of raid into Venezuela in the near future. We're not going to do a full-on invasion. We don't have enough troops in the region to do an invasion of Venezuela, but we wouldn't want to do that anyway. Venezuela is a very large country, 40 million people, and it would take hundreds of thousands of people, of troops, to actually invade and take over Venezuela. The Venezuelan armed forces would not be much of an adversary to our forces. We could make short work of the Venezuelan forces, which are poorly led, poorly trained, poorly funded, poorly equipped, etc. And they're really not all that loyal to Nicolas Maduro. That's why Nicolas Maduro is being protected as we speak by Cuban and Russian mercenaries rather than his own forces, because he doesn't trust his own forces to get anywhere close to him. They've had thousands of Venezuelan soldiers that have defected into Colombia out of Venezuela over the last several years. And I've met some of those and keep in touch with them. And they'll tell you, man, if the United States were to invade, the Venezuelan military would just fold. They would be happy to get out from under Nicolas Maduro. Everybody in Venezuela hates Nicolas Maduro. So, except for the people that he's paying off to like him. It's kind of like Russia and Vladimir Putin. So, I see here, Tim is asking, the Daily Wire is reporting there's fracturing inside Venezuela between Maduro and his generals. Is this President Trump's goal to try and change the regime there? Yes, it is, as a matter of fact. And I've read the same reports that Nicolas Maduro is extremely paranoid. He is moving locations, and they're heavily jamming GPS signals anywhere near where he happens to be. As I said, he surrounded himself with foreign mercenaries, and he never goes very far from his private jet, which would be his escape hatch if there is some sort of attempt to capture him inside Venezuela. Putting a $50 million bounty on somebody's head is a good way to, sort of get the people around him to start going, look at the money. Do I, really want to stay loyal to Nicolas Maduro, or do I want to take the money and have be $50 million richer, right? Nico says, I've heard a lot of drugs are coming in from Canada. That's true. And the cartels definitely move things through Canada. I was just up in Maine last week, and that's a big problem because we have a 4,000-mile border with Canada and only one Border Patrol agent for every 30 miles. And that would be if all of them were on duty at the same time, which obviously is not sustainable. So it's actually much worse than that. So probably one Border Patrol agent for every 90 or 100 miles of border up in Canada. So it's essentially wide open. And if the cartels can get their drugs to Canada, then it's a very simple thing to get it across the border into the US. So yes, that's definitely a thing. Now, let's see. Thank you, MM, for being here. Thank you, Laylo, for being here, our members. I appreciate all of you. You can become a member on YouTube, and I think it's like $5 a month to support us as a actual member, and you get early access to some of our videos and stuff like that. But if you're going to support us, the best way to do it is to go to chuckholton.com. If you go to chuckholton.com, you can, where is my Chuck? Oh, there it is, my little banner. chuckholton.com is where you can sign up as a supporter or a subscriber for free. But if you're a supporter, then you're going to get lots of early access, lots of extra content, and monthly phone calls with me, video calls we do with our supporters over on chuckholton.com. So I would highly recommend you think about, if you like the content, number one, make sure you're subscribed here on YouTube, and then go over to chuckholton.com and become a supporter over there, and you get all that extra good stuff. And we're probably going to be giving away some of these t-shirts in the near future as well. So there's that. Now, I'm also going to put this link down in the bottom for my new YouTube channel. It's called Borderline Global Adventures for the time being. And it's just, I go to so many awesome places around the globe. I see so much incredible beauty. And a lot of times it's in war zones, and sometimes it's just on the way to a war zone, or it's, just in the course of my travels. And so what I have started doing is just filming walks, the hiking that I do through the mountains of Kazakhstan, or through the Dolomites in Italy, or I was just up in Maine, and I got a bunch of great video of the drone footage of the fall colors up there and that sort of thing. So all that stuff is going up over on my new YouTube channel, Borderline Global Adventures. I would love it. It would be a personal favor to me if you'd go subscribe over there, just so I can get the numbers up, and just play some of the videos, set them, and it's nice to just have this. There's no commentary. It's not my face talking to you on camera. It's just point of view, as if you're there watching these beautiful videos. And if you just play a few of them, that'll help get the watch time up as well. So thank you to all of you for going over there to that. Now, that link tree that's in the description down there also is one way you can donate if you want to donate to help the people that we help all around the globe, like the single mothers that we support in Colombia. We have a program for them there, the people's who medical needs we've been covering, things like that, all around the globe, from Israel to Ukraine to Armenia to Panama to Colombia to the United States. We help a lot of people that are having their worst day, and you can join us with that by going to linktree.com. I'm sorry, linktr.ee/Holton. So that just put that up there. Okay, now I want to talk about President Petro in Colombia. This guy he's a piece of work. I mean, bless his little heart, pea-picking heart. He is a staunch communist. He is a former guerrilla who, back in the 80s, was involved in violent struggle against the government in Colombia. He's been in politics now for a long time. And he's, like I said, just a diehard communist. He's good friends with Nicolas Maduro. And so he has been running interference for Maduro on the military buildup in the Caribbean. And he gave a speech. Now I'm going to play some extended portions of this speech, or a couple of minutes of his speech. And what I did was translated it from Spanish into English using an artificial intelligence program. So it might sound a little weird, because if President Petro stutters or does something like that, the AI will make it stutter in English, which is strange. I wish it didn't do that. But I want you to listen to this, and I'm going to stop it at various points and kind of comment on what he had to say about what we're doing in the Caribbean Sea.
Sailing the sea, but had its engines lifted and therefore was stationary, which was hit by a missile.
Oh, that's
Look, but when facing the issue in the Caribbean Sea, which has nothing to do with fentanyl, what the United States is producing is what it wants is the oil from Venezuela.
Okay, so he says, number one, that this has nothing to do with fentanyl, what's happening in the Caribbean. And he's somewhat correct about that. I mean, the fentanyl is something that comes out of Mexico. The precursor chemicals for that make fentanyl come in from China to Mexico and then are made primarily in Mexico. So he's right about that, that this doesn't have to do with fentanyl. But what it does have to do with is cocaine. So he doesn't mention that. He's just like, yeah, they're talking about fentanyl and we have nothing to do with fentanyl, and as if that should just end the argument there, and the U.S. should just leave them alone. Well, it does have to do with the tremendous amount of cocaine that's still coming north to the United States, as well as heroin and marijuana and other things like that. So the boats that have been spontaneously combusted in the Caribbean Sea by U.S. operations in recent days, they've had more than a dozen, I think now. More than 30 people have been unalived by these operations. And some of them were actually Colombians as well as Venezuelans. So President Petro of Colombia is upset about that. And what he says is this has nothing to do with drugs. This is just about the United States wants Venezuela's oil. Well, let's break that down, shall we? The United States has a tremendous amount of oil reserves, not as much as Venezuela. For sure, Venezuela has, I think, the largest proven reserves of oil in the world. And the United States is nowhere close to that. But having the reserves is not the same thing as being able to get it out of the ground and put it up on the market. So the United States produces about 13 million barrels a day of oil. And that was almost 5 billion barrels last year. Venezuela, by contrast, even though they have much more oil in the ground, they can't they can't produce it because communism. And so they're only producing about 1 million barrels a day. So the United States is producing 13 times as much oil as Venezuela. That being the case, why would the United States need Venezuela's oil? We don't. We're essentially energy independent at this point with the oil that we already have. And that doesn't count the natural gas that we've got, in the ground as well. So it doesn't stand to reason that this is just about oil. The United States, there are two U.S. companies, Chevron and I believe Mobil, who are currently, as we speak, extracting oil from Venezuelan waters under a lease with Venezuela. And even with all the sanctions that have been put on Nicolas Maduro and on Venezuela, the Trump administration has carved out an exemption for those U.S. companies who are getting their oil from Venezuela. So that's kind of gross. I mean, if you ask me, look, if we're going to sanction them, let's sanction them. Let's get it over with. Let's go whole hog and crush them economically and not continue to pay them under the table with these carve-outs and exemptions. Okay, let's listen to some more of what Petro had to say.
And from Guyana. Now, the oil grid is what's behind the strategy of launching missiles at fishermen.
So he says also that the U.S. it wants the oil from Guyana. Well, I mean, certainly we want Guyana to be able to sell their oil to us. Petro doesn't mention there that Venezuela has claimed ownership over 2/3 of the entire nation of Guyana. If you recall, I was in Guyana a few weeks ago and went into the Essequibo region, which is that part that Venezuela claims ownership over. It's a very densely jungled region, and there's nothing in there but jungle. So there's no reason for Venezuela. There's no roads between Venezuela and Guyana. So there's no reason for Venezuela to just say that's our land. There's nothing in there, except just offshore of the Essequibo region, there's 13 billion barrels of oil. So it's Venezuela that's trying to steal the oil from Guyana and not the United States. The United States wants to help develop those fields and buy the oil from Guyana, which will make Guyana extremely wealthy. But Petro doesn't go there.
There are already fishermen from the island of Trinidad and Tobago who died under a missile. There is already a video of a boat that was not sailing the sea but had its engines lifted and therefore was stationary, which was hit by a missile.
So the videos that have been coming out of the U.S. striking these drug boats are, grainy thermal imaging footage. And it's hard to tell from looking at the footage that they're releasing what's in those boats. But what you need to understand is that the United States has much better capability in terms of surveillance than what they are showing to you and me. And with that in mind, the U.S. says we know who's in those boats, and we are 100% sure that those were drug boats. Then I believe them. And he's talking about these fishermen from Trinidad and Tobago. The families of a couple of people have come forward from Trinidad, not Tobago, but from Trinidad, and have said, my son's a fisherman and he didn't come home from his latest outing yesterday, and we're afraid he got blown up. Well, if your son was going out and shipping drugs from Venezuela to Trinidad so that they could be further shipped to the United States, would he tell his mother that he was shipping drugs, or would he tell his mother he was going out fishing? He would obviously tell his mom he's going out fishing. And so it's not like the United States is just randomly bombing any craft that happens to be on the water. Not to mention the fact that these boats that are being struck, we can tell from the footage, are not fishing boats. Those boats that are being struck have 2 to 4 very powerful outboard motors on the back of them to help them go very, very fast. You don't need that kind of motor, that kind of setup for a fishing boat. And the fishing boats would have one motor most likely and would not be near as fast as these boats that are go fast cigarette boats. You know, you don't need a cigarette boat to go fishing. And not only would it not be practical, but it would be far too expensive. I saw one of those boats that somebody estimated the motors alone on the boat that they blew up were more than $70,000. Well, how many fishermen from Trinidad can afford $70,000 motors for their fishing boats? That doesn't make any sense at all. So Petro is absolutely gaslighting here. It's a straw man argument. And so let's continue. Well,
we still do not know the exact point. There are already young fishermen who left their homes in Santa Marta and have not returned.
So he's saying that there may be some Colombians that have not returned, that were on fishing expeditions.
It is not yet time to say anything definitive, but we are concerned because their families are calling. I ask all the families turning home in a strange manner in places where there are ports to immediately notify the authorities, and we will see what has happened to them.
So what he's saying is that if your son is a fisherman and he went out fishing and didn't come home, please notify the authorities right away, and we will, try to figure out if the United States killed him.
Because if what is happening is that any of the Colombians have died under the missiles, I asked all the human rights lawyers that today we apologize because the Colombian state murdered and persecuted them in past decades too.
Okay. So now we get into the history of U.S.-Colombia relations. What he said there was that we apologize to the Colombians for the past murders of Colombian citizens by the Colombian government. And here's what he's talking about. Back in 2006 to about 2010, Colombia went to war on the cartels, on the drugs, especially the FARC. And the FARC, now Petro at that time was a senator. He wasn't part of the FARC, but he's always been very left-wing, and FARC is a left-wing organization. So you could say that there was some amity, at least, between the two. But nevertheless, the United States assisted Colombia with, covert operations in that war from 2006 on, let's say. Now, part of that was spraying the coca fields with Roundup to kill off the coca plants and encourage the farmers that were growing the coca to grow something else. And they're now they're saying, oh gosh, that Roundup they're spraying on people caused birth defects and stuff like that. Okay, maybe. But what he's specifically referencing here is operations starting in 2006, where the United States, look, the Air Force in Colombia did not have much going for it. They had a couple of aging jets. They didn't have any fighter jets per se, but the United States came up with a plan to equip the jets that Colombia had to mount 1,000-pound bombs, like dumb bombs, on those planes, but then to retrofit them with an apparatus that slipped on top of this dumb bomb and turned it into a precision glide bomb. These are the kind of bombs that we're seeing Russia using against Ukraine all the time now. They're glide bombs. They take a dumb bomb, which is, 1,000-pound or 1,000 kilograms, a large bomb, and they put fins on it, and they put a little guidance package on the front with a camera and GPS and everything that will guide it to its target, and that turns the dumb bomb into a smart bomb. That's what the United States did back in 2006 in Colombia. And Colombia then started bombing FARC commanders. So in March of 2008, for example, this is the best documented strike. There was a guy named Raul Reyes and a couple of other commanders, FARC leaders, who financed guerrilla activity in part through narcotics. And they were insurgent commanders. And they were killed by an airstrike across the border they were just across the border in Ecuador. And that airstrike was affected by the Colombian Air Force, but the Colombian Air Force never flew into Ecuador. They just used these glide bombs. They stayed in Colombian airspace and they dropped their bombs, and the bombs glided into Ecuador and landed on this camp, the FARC camp, and blew it up. Caused a major diplomatic sort of dust up between Ecuador and Colombia, and also Venezuela was pretty upset about that. Hugo Chavez was real upset about that. But that wasn't the only time. I mean, so the people that they were killing, they killed a guy named Jorge Briceño in 2010 in a Colombian operation, and there were some other FARC commanders that were struck by these bombs. So that's what Petro is referring to. So he's actually apologizing to the Colombian people for the Colombian government taking out narco kingpins in their country. I'm really, really sorry. The Colombian government should have never gone after Colombian citizens, saying nothing of the fact that these Colombian citizens were, in fact, narco terrorists that were taking people hostage. So at that time, between 2006 and 2010, in Colombia, there were quite a few U.S. Special Operations Forces operating inside that country. I know some of them personally. And they were training and equipping the Colombian military. They were offering intelligence support to the Colombian military. They were also taking part in kinetic operations against the FARC. The Killing Pablo, I think I have that book here somewhere. Yeah, Killing Pablo by Martin Bowden. This book is all about how the Delta Force operators tracked down Pablo Escobar in Colombia and took him off the board. They unalived Pablo Escobar. That was done by U.S. Special Operations Forces with the Delta Force. And I'm good friends with the guy who was the commander of Delta Force at that time, Jerry Boykin. And he's told me all about it. And at the time, they gave credit to that for that operation to the Colombian military who was there, but it was actually U.S. troops that took him out. So all of that to say, there is an actual precedent for conducting military operations under the table in Latin American countries by the United States. And these, like I say, these guys were all over Colombia. As a matter of fact, there was another really spectacular operation. The FARC was taking a bunch of hostages. They had 3 American contractors that they had taken hostage, and then a bunch of others. Ingrid Betancourt from France. And anyway, I used to know all their names and everything. But so the U.S. Special Operations troops that were in Colombia set up a rescue mission for these hostages. And I'm going to show you this report from, I believe it was 2010 when this took place. I'm going to show you this report from CBS because it was spectacular what they did. And in the report, they give credit to the Colombian military, and they don't say anything about the fact that there were Delta Force operators on the helicopter that conducted the rescue. Take a listen.
And now to the video of that daring rescue.
Oh, hold on, I got to get rid of this guy. I can't have him up there. There we go. Okay.
15 hostages held for years in the jungle by terrorists. Tonight, we're getting our first look inside the mission in which Colombian soldiers posed as rebels and tricked the captors into handing over the hostages. Kimberly Dozier has the latest.
It's a high-stakes ruse with dozens of lives in the balance. 15 hostages, including 3 Americans, think they're being moved again from one Colombian rebel camp to another. As they move to the waiting helicopters, they're surrounded by armed rebels. This hostage, held for a decade and a member of the Colombian army, shouts at the camera to what he thinks is a rebel film crew. In fact, he's actually holding up his own rescue.
I have been chained for 10 years.
After so long in captivity, these men and women have no idea they're seconds from freedom. A second hostage rages against his captors. Frenchwoman Ingrid Betancourt looks drained. Once every last hostage is safely inside the helicopter, one of their rescuers in disguise yells, "We're the Colombian army," and
You're free now.
this man was held for a decade.
10 years later, 10 years later.
This is the moment every dream they dared not hope came true. The Colombians had been tracking the hostages for months and infiltrated the rebel group. U.S. Quick Reaction Forces stood by to respond, ready to be summoned by panic devices in the helicopters. But the rescue went forward without a shot fired and with every life saved. Kimberly Dozier, CBS News, Washington.
Let's see, back to that. Now, you can see there, these guys posed as medical workers, aid workers that were going to move the hostages from one camp to another. And they worked it out so that they convinced FARC to let them come in and do that. And then when they got the aircraft in the air, the Red Crosses came off and U.S. military came on. And guess what? Now the captors were the hostages, or were the prisoners, and the hostages were set free. So again, there is precedent for this. And I wanted to show that last because I wanted to point out that the precedent goes both ways. FARC made a habit of taking hostages as a form of currency. We've just seen that happen in Israel with Hamas. And I have been predicting this, that we are going to see more hostage taking around the globe by bad actors, whether it's by the cartels in Mexico, by Hezbollah, Hamas, other terror groups. And because the war in Israel has shown all the bad players in the world that hostage taking paid off. And that's not Israel's fault. It's just that, they did what they had to do to get their hostages back. But I just really believe that we're going to see more hostage taking as time goes on. So as these cartels are being targeted by the U.S. military, they're not going to go quietly. They're not going to just give up. They have very large organizations. They have a tremendous amount of money. And they use that money to hire mercenaries, they have their own intelligence apparatus. So the CIA is not the only one that's collecting signals intelligence or human intelligence on both sides of the border. The cartels are doing so in the United States as well. And that's why it is so concerning to see that the cartels are putting bounties on the heads of U.S. law enforcement, because how long will it be if the U.S. starts striking in Venezuela, in Colombia, in Mexico, before the cartels start to take hostages and use them as human shields and put America in the same dilemma that Israel has been in over the last couple of years. So there's that. Now, I want to get to the questions real quick. Folks, let me just thank you again for watching the Hot Zone. Make sure that you're subscribed, please, and hit the like button on this video if you like it. You're happy with the content. Those likes really do help. So does the chat revenue, whether it's super chat, super thanks, tips, whatever you want to call it. That helps the channel to grow, and it tells the YouTube algorithm people really like this content. So thank you for all of you who have donated there. And we've got a bunch of new members already today as well. So thank you for that. Now, so last but not least, I want to go over to our questions. Anthony Kyle says, how many times did Green Berets train quote unquote rebels that later went on to kill U.S. infantry soldiers? Well, there's a non-zero chance of that happening for sure. And you've heard me make the argument about arming other countries. Like if there's a conflict that deserves our attention, that poses a national security threat to the United States, then perhaps we should be willing to put our own troops on the ground to address that problem, rather than trying to arm and train other groups, because it's not so much the groups that we train that become enemies. I can think of one real good example of that, where the West trained a bunch of ex-pirates to be pirate hunters to try to be a police force. They called it the Puntland Maritime Police Force. Puntland Maritime Police Force. And that, it was in Somalia, and these guys, they ended up going right back to being pirates. So we just got better trained pirates now after that plan fell through. That was a deal that Eric Prince was involved in with good intentions, without a doubt. And it was a good idea, but it didn't work out in practice. More importantly is that the weapons that we give to other countries may eventually be shooting back at us, maybe not from that country, because those weapons are durable and they move around and they get sold off or stolen or whatever, and they end up shooting back at us. As a matter of fact, a lot of the weapons that the cartel is, somebody saying that my audio is breaking up. How about if I go to make sure, let's see, if I change my microphone, maybe it'll be better there. Let's try this microphone. Maybe it'll be better audio. Many of the weapons that the cartels are using to kill each other, to kill Mexicans and other people, is they came from, they are American M16s that were sold to the Mexican army and subsequently went AWOL, walked off. So those weapons are durable and fungible, and they ended up coming back to bite us. May end up shooting back at U.S. troops if we do go kinetic against the cartels. It's ironic to think that U.S. troops might be shot at by U.S. weapons that were sold to Mexico, to the Mexican military. That's great. So yeah, I mean, you have a point there for sure. KP1 says, at the rate of the decline in the U.S., how long do you think we could end up looking like Haiti? We're never going to look like Haiti. We have a Christian foundation to this country, and Haiti does not. And so there's no comparison between the two. America was founded on the golden rule: do unto others the way you would have them do unto you. Haiti was founded on the opposite of that: take from others before they take from you. Do unto others before they do to you. And there's no comparison. The United States will not become like Haiti. It definitely will get worse, but there are enough good people left in America that's not gonna happen. Plus, we have the Second Amendment. Ron Lippman says, how long before GAIN becomes their own powerful cartel? Well, that's speculation. Brenda Brinkman says, have you heard that Fatah has joined Hamas, or is it just a rumor? Fatah and Hamas don't get along very well, so I don't believe that they have joined Hamas, but that's not on the topic of this one. And so, all right, that's all I've got for questions for today. Again, I appreciate all of you. Thank you very much for being a part of the Hot Zone, and I hope that you will continue to follow our channel. We make short, condensed versions of these lives every day that we put up. If you don't have time to watch the long form, that's great. Go watch the condensed version. It'll be up in 12 hours or so after this gets done. So thank you to our moderators. Thank you to our viewers. God bless you. We'll see you next time.